Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending where you're at. My name is Robert Ludke. I have the honor of moderating our panel called Case Studies in Disability-Driven Innovation. And I'll introduce our distinguished panelists in a moment, but really what this panel is about is the highlighting the transformative power of innovation driven by persons with disabilities that time and time again has proven to create value across society for everyone, regardless of disability, through new ideas, new products, new goods and services that make all of our lives better. And so again, it is a way of creating long-term lasting value for society. And really what this conversation today will be about is it's a think of this as a master class in just new ways of thinking, new ways of bringing people into the workforce, and scaling ideas into concepts, to products that, again, that transform our lives. And just, to maybe remind everyone how much all of us use disability-driven innovation every day, right? Think of curb cuts and sidewalks. Think of the cruise control in your cars. Think of the good old-fashioned typewriter, all a result of disability-driven innovation. And just think of the trillions and trillions of dollars of economic value those innovations have created, but also the lasting impact that each of those have had in our lives. And I recently wrote a book called Case Studies in Disability-Driven Innovation, and I think that the biggest takeaway that I had from the book, and this was such a wonderful learning, is that I must have interviewed over 50 people who identify as disabled in the book. And time again, they told me that their superpower was in fact their disability, that it wasn't this, it wasn't their education, it wasn't their brilliance or anything like that. It was their disability, and that taught them just the power of resilience, of courage, and of getting up and going back to school the next day in the face of defeat. And I think we're going to talk about some of that too, about being resilient and how that is instrumental to driving innovation. So without further ado, let me introduce our distinguished panelists. On the very far right, I'm sorry, I should have described myself. So my name is Robert Ludke. I'm on your far right, the far left of the panel. I'm wearing a blue blazer with a blue and white check shirt, and I have short, quickly graying hair. The panelist next to me is Sarah Mark from Salesforce. She is wearing a black and white checked blazer. She has very, very nice platinum hair. Mike Hess is in Mike is in the middle, wearing the infamous golden hoodie. There we go. Mike will talk about why he was awarded the golden hoodie in a bit. And then on the far right is Diego Mariscal. And so Sarah is the Director of Workforce Development in the Office of Accessibility at Salesforce, where she leads the Workforce Navigators program. And that is an initiative dedicated to building strategic partnerships to enhance disability inclusion and accessibility at every stage of a career seeker's journey within the Salesforce ecosystem. And the Workforce Navigators programming includes mentorship programs, providing scholarship opportunities for job seekers, and fostering collaborations with nonprofits and NGOs such as Mike and the team at the Blind Institute of Technology. Mike is the founder and the executive director of the Blind Institute of Technology, which is a global organization headquartered in Denver, Colorado, working hard to advance professional opportunities for people with disabilities. And through partnerships with organizations such as Salesforce and other Fortune 500 companies around the world, BIT has celebrated employment successes in areas such as website development, business analysis, and finance. And as Mike has said, BIT's mission is to blaze a path between companies and the untapped talent of professionals with disabilities. And Diego, disabled and proud, Diego is the founder and CEO of Together International, a nonprofit organization and global startup accelerator run by and for entrepreneurs with disabilities. Diego also is passionate for inclusion and accessibility and advocating for both. And he and his team at 2GI and their partner organizations work to empower founders with disabilities with the tools and resources they need for their companies to be leaders in their respective industries. So Mike, I want to ask you the first question, and this is something that you and I have talked a lot about in the past, which is there's a big difference between someone getting a job and someone having a career that evolves around their job. Can you differentiate the difference between a job and a career, and kind of BIT's role in fostering the development of careers, the development of workforce, rather than just placing people in jobs?
Absolutely, Bob. In the U.S. specifically, I'll talk about the U.S. market for right now. So way too often, specifically for the blind, low vision community, the options for employment have circulated around, call it customer service, manufacturing, and I don't know what the third would be. It's a really limited opportunities for the blind, low vision community that have historically been out there. And growing up in tech as I did, technology is the game changer. And regardless of what industry individuals are wanting to go into, it doesn't matter if it's the service industry or healthcare or hospitality, it doesn't matter. Like, technology is always going to be a part of that career seeker's journey. And so allowing individuals to, first of all, feel more comfortable and more empowered with accessible technology will allow them to have choice. And since software like Salesforce it's in 90% of the Fortune 500 companies, you can go into healthcare, you can go into financial services, you can go into tech, you can go. I mean, it doesn't matter the industry, but all of a sudden, accessible tech allows an individual just to have choice, right? And with choice is power. Like, don't put me in a box just because A, I'm blind, and B, I'm blind, right? Like, so you just don't put me in that box just because you think that here are my options. So accessible tech empowers individuals, and it's more pervasive than just blind, low vision. Accessible tech is the game changer for so many of the professionals with disabilities community.
Thank you, Mike. And Sarah, maybe you can take his answer a step or two further and talk about the Workforce Navigators program and what Salesforce is trying to achieve about it, both for Salesforce, but more broadly for workforce development.
Yeah, thank you. So the Workforce Navigators program was developed, we launched it 5 years ago now, 2020. And the business case for it is Salesforce is this enormous enterprise tech company, right? All of our customers and partners need talent to run the platform. And we as a company are therefore inspired, motivated to help build that talent pipeline. And as Mike often says, we have a huge untapped talent pool in people with disabilities. So there's a real business case for doing this work. It's not a charitable cause. It's part of our strategy. I just wanted to say, too, Bob, regarding your intro, as you were talking, I was thinking, as people say, my disability is my superpower, and that the disability drives innovation, that seems almost so obvious now as I'm thinking about it, right? Like, what is innovation? Innovation is thinking of a new way to do things. And what would cause you to need to find a new way to do things, but not being able to do it the way everyone else is doing it due to a disability of whatever kind? And new ways of doing things, as we've talked about all throughout this week, are beneficial to everyone for all kinds of reasons that we may or may not expect at the beginning of that innovation. So, yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for that.
No, well, that's a perfect answer, and it's also a perfect lead to Diego, because Diego, you're working with innovators and entrepreneurs really at the opposite end of the spectrum of an established global company like Salesforce. And they are innovating across really every concept in society. So tell us a little bit about your work at 2GI. Tell us a little bit about what life is like for a lot of your entrepreneurs, and what's kind of the mission critical needs that they require to become the next Salesforce.
Yeah, so great questions. So first, I'll share to kind of piggyback on what Sarah was saying. And disclaimer: Bob and I are good friends, so what I'm about to say comes from a good place. I think that the term superpower in introductions when we talk about disability somewhat alienates the conversation around disability, because superpower has this sort of underlining connotation that it's not something that we can relate to. So we deliberately, specifically at Together International, talk about disability as a competitive advantage for business, because they're two sides of the same coin. Meaning, as a person with a disability, you have to be resilient, you have to be creative, you have to be innovative on how you live your life, how we get dressed, how we drive, how we communicate. And the whole thesis of Together International, and we've seen this time and time again, is those are the same skills that entrepreneurs have to develop, hone, and perfect, right? And so if we give folks the right resources and support, they can hone those skills so that disabilities, in fact, become a competitive advantage for them as entrepreneurs. So to answer your question more specifically, what have we seen in the entrepreneurs that we support? For example, Eric Ingram, who does satellite inspection in space, who was also featured in your book, he talks about my competitive advantage has been that resiliency, that tenacity, that creativity that has come from my disability, more so than the industry itself. And to the second part of your question, which is what challenges do we face specifically, I think it's more so systematical challenges, meaning many entrepreneurship spaces are not accessible for founders with disabilities. Many of us in the States and around the world face benefit challenges because if we make too much money, we're at risk of losing Medicaid and other healthcare benefits. So it's an infrastructural barriers that Together International and others are trying to break so that there can be more Salesforce, so that there can be more leaders of industries that are not bound by the limitations of this systematic limitations, if you will.
And maybe now, Sarah, let me come back to you, because one way to really transform the economy, one way to really advance many of the startups that Diego works with, is for corporations like Salesforce with these massive global supply chains to bring more entrepreneurs with disabilities in the supply chains, their innovations into the supply chains. In the case of your partnership with Mike, just bringing them into the workforce in a really meaningful way. Like, how does Salesforce look at disability-driven innovation, workforce development in a comprehensive way at all levels of the organization, rather than just a program or two that are part of what Salesforce does to drive its workforce?
Yeah, so my program, Workforce Navigators, sits within the Office of Accessibility, which is a small but mighty organization that sits within our finance department, and we are operating under a hub and spoke model, right? So rather than just owning product accessibility or digital accessibility, we have members who advocate for disability inclusion and accessibility in every aspect of the company. So in events, real estate, sure, compliance, but that's really the very basic first step that we try and leap over really quickly. So the answer is that we insert ourselves into every team across the company. We have team members at all different countries across we're a global company. We have representatives all over the world, and we work really hard to build relationships cross-functionally so that we have champions embedded into every program, touching every aspect, including product, but not limited to product.
And when you're building those relationships and you're championing the work that you do, like what's your selling point when when you come into the room and you talk to your colleagues, like what is the selling point for your work? What's the value proposition behind it?
So, I mean, it depends on who you're talking to, right? And how far along they are in this conversation already. There are people who are so happy to have this conversation and ready to go as far as we can go. And then there are folks who start off reticent or don't see the value, and so then we're starting from a different, position. But our argument is always that this is good for business. This is good for business in every way, and again, in ways that we may not even be thinking about when we're first thinking about addressing a particular accessibility barrier. So there are studies that show disability inclusion at a company not only increases revenue because of the product being available to millions of additional people, but also increases company loyalty through the employees who feel a sense of pride in belonging to a company that advocates for and does disability inclusive work. Aside from people with disabilities, there are family members of people with disabilities who are working in our company, and we have seen a really strong advocacy push from our employees that's actually the reason the Office of Accessibility exists, is because of our employee resource group advocating for it about 5 years ago. So everyone that you meet with, you have to treat like an individual, right? So the first step is sort of assessing where are you at, and then what's going to be the motivating factor for you to take this forward in your particular role.
Perfect. And Mike, you've been in the workforce. You are a very successful, very senior level IT executive in a number of companies. You now mentor people to be successful in the workforce. Like, what is the, maybe on the individual level, the value proposition that you try to instill in the people that you mentor about what they bring to their organization, whatever their role may be?
Sure. I want to piggyback on what Sarah was saying though too about kind of the value proposition. So like as of June 28th here in the EU, the European Accessibility Act is about to be instituted. So so this is what I had heard in a session yesterday was it's the first accessibility legislation with teeth here in the EU, which means that the EU is able to take products off the shelf if they are not accessible. So accessibility isn't one of those like, oh, this is so nice and it feels so good and look at the silver lining and we're helping. No. No, this is business team, right? Like businesses are in business for bottom line, and accessibility adds to the bottom line, and that's the exact same approach. So when we so BIT Blind Institute Technologies mission, so we have kind of two communities that we bridge for, right? So the professionals, the greatest untapped human potential on the planet, which is professionals with disabilities, and we're able to prove that statistically. And then you have organizations, and again, another session here at the Zero Conference yesterday, like by 2030, not too far away, team, we're talking an 80 million person shortage in the workforce, right? So 80 million people shortage, and yet you have this huge untapped human potential in professionals with disabilities. So for organizations like the business, and then if you look at the Accenture Disability Equality Index report, where organizations that recruit and retain talent from the professionals with disabilities community have a 28% higher revenue, 2 times higher net operating income. The business case is there. There's no reason why professionals with disabilities should be removed or even not thought of when it comes to the talent pool equation. However, what's interesting, just having an amazing conversation in the courtyard just now with a young woman from Persia, from Iran, and talking about that population of like, we're having this true conversation about disability and how in a third of the world right now, disability is still shameful. Right? It's still like this, like we, the disability community, are just, I mean, in some parts, so many parts of the world, like we're shameful to families. Like we're omitted because of culture. So we have to get, like, to me, the solution for this, it's a Marcom, it's a communications, it's a marketing kind of solution to get out there and to showcase, like, we are the greatest untapped human potential on the planet, and it's all due to marketing.
Diego, I saw your eyes light up, so why don't you follow up on that?
I mean, we started this conversation, right, talking about marketing and using the term superpower versus competitive advantage, and I totally agree. The whole preface of Together International and the work that I think Zero Project and others are doing is repositioning repositioning disability as the source of innovation and untapped potential. And I mean, we talked about it earlier, right? That disability has a potential to affect all of us, right? If we live long enough, we're gonna be a part of the community. And there was a conversation we were having earlier, right, about whether or not disability is a niche market or a large market. And I think that more than that, it's really how do we look at changing the mindset of the entire global population so that a marketing play essentially, so that they start to see disability as an opportunity market, as an opportunity to innovate, as an opportunity to bring forefront of innovation to everybody.
Okay, so we're now marketing the value proposition of disability. So Sarah, you're a very compelling and effective internal marketer of disability in the value proposition of disability at Salesforce. If speaking to the audience here, I mean, what are 3 or 4 lessons that you've learned in all your communications, your engagements with your colleagues at Salesforce that you feel could apply kind of across the private sector to, not only understand the value proposition of hiring persons with disabilities, but like truly creating an environment to maximize not only their talent, but frankly, the talent of their entire team? Because studies have shown once you foster a culture of psychological safety for everyone, the entire organization benefits. So just explain some of the lessons that you've learned in your time with Salesforce that, again, could apply to others and maybe some takeaways for folks here.
Okay, so I'm going to speak candidly because that's what I do. You have to let people say dumb things. You have to have conversations where you're willing to let people make mistakes. Sometimes those conversations can be difficult to hear, but you're not going to get anywhere if you only talk to the people who already have bought in. So you have to be willing to have those conversations. You have to start initiating those conversations. And I think, I have another friend who works in inclusion, and she said, people always think, we'll have a hiring initiative, we'll bring people in, and then it will be inclusive. And no, it's the opposite, right? We need to create an inclusive environment. And for one, people are already there. They may just not be telling you because it doesn't feel inclusive. And 2, more people will be interested in joining because we can tell when a place is a hostile work environment or a friendly work environment. It's not a secret. It's readable right away, and we feel it in our bodies. We're animals, right? Human animals. We can tell if we are welcome or if we're under threat. So my marketing advice is to have those conversations, start normalizing having those conversations frequently. It's not once a year for Disability Employment Awareness Month. And and trying to call people in and sharing information so that they feel empowered to start having those conversations and initiating those conversations as well.
Perfect. And Mike, when you're talking with the people in the programs at Blind Institute of Technology, what do you tell them so that they are best equipped to frankly meet some of the challenges that Sarah just outlined, push through those challenges, and really every day bring value to their organization.
Oof. So again, another great conversation that we're having here at Zero earlier was talking about resilience and just the internal fortitude to overcome like that. So people with disabilities, like that's kind of our everyday. Like this world wasn't built for me. It wasn't built for it wasn't. So, newsflash, it wasn't. However, again, so like another stat I learned here at Zero: 84% of people with disabilities acquire their disability in their adulthood. So it's a huge percentage of people. So a lot of folks are learning, right, that resilience, and they learn really quickly that the world wasn't built for them. So, so helping them along with because the perception for those individuals is, I can no longer be an attorney, I can no longer be a software engineer, I can no longer whatever, fill in the blank. And so we're here to let them know, no, absolutely you can, and it's going to look and sound a bit different. And so a lot of the wraparound services that we offer to our career seekers is exactly that. It's just helping them with this journey. So disability is a journey. I've been legally blind or blind my entire life. Shortly after the Mayflower landed, it's been a long time, right? So kind of used to this, but I do have dark days, and it has nothing to do with my blindness, right? Like, so disability is it's a mental, emotional, spiritual journey, right? And we help individuals, career seekers all over the globe, and it's just one of these amazing. Like, I'm so fortunate to be like part of this amazing journey of blindness to technology, because it doesn't matter the culture. Doesn't matter the culture. I mean, socioeconomic, geopolitical, doesn't matter the persuasion of individuals that reach out to us. They are like, disability transcends all of that. I mean, we talked about in Pakistan, in Israel. It doesn't matter where people are calling in from. Like, we have so many similar, like it's really hard to be blind or disabled in Pakistan, and it's really hard to be blind or disabled in the U.S. Like, it just is. And so that uniqueness, that lived experience, just draws us together in a community where we can say, and we always have an intake process. And our initial interview, it's always a professional with a disability. And we always say, hey, by the way, I'm legally blind or blind my entire life. Do you identify with a disability? And we hear this like, oh, because they're like, yeah, and I usually don't say that I am, but thank you for giving me this safe place.
And Diego, a lot of the people that you work with together internationally, your entrepreneurs, I mean, they come to this entrepreneurial journey from a lot of different ways. Some of them are just have this natural passion for entrepreneurship and innovation. Some of them, for all the reasons that we've talked about here, feel that the so-called traditional career path isn't available or open or accommodating to them, and therefore they're in a way forced or required to take their career into their own hands and innovate their own career through entrepreneurship. How do you kind of manage those expectations and all those different approaches to entrepreneurship with the differing people that you work with in 2GI?
So first of all, I'm going to say, I'm going to give a plug to Bob and his book. I get the last word in the book, and apparently I get the last word here.
Close to the last word here, too.
He must like me somehow. So how do we work with entrepreneurs that are various different stages? I think there's been a multitude of perspectives, right, of how someone comes to entrepreneurship or to innovation, right? And it goes back to what we said in the beginning of thinking about disability as a competitive advantage for business marketing and that sort of storytelling. To piggyback on what Mike was saying, because we're talking about disability as a competitive advantage, and because we're giving people access to resources, mentorship, and funding, many of our entrepreneurs who participate in our program, it's the first time they are ever identifying as having a disability, because we only work with entrepreneurs who have disabilities. So to be eligible to our programs, they have to identify as having a disability. And so because we're flipping the script, because we're saying disability is something positive that gives you access to these things, more and more people are feeling comfortable disclosing their disability. They're feeling a part of a community, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things, if not the thing, that we hear again and again of the entrepreneurs that we work with, more than the mentors, more than the resources we provide, is the community of people that they can see themselves in, and that they don't have to feel like they have to mask or pretend. And I think bringing that community and creating that storytelling of innovation and creativity allows people to be more of themselves. So
You truly have the last
go.
word. So thank you. Sarah Mark from Salesforce, Mike Hess, Blind Institute of Technology, Diego Mariscal, Together International. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.